Listen, I don't care how good of a person you think you are, inside all of us is the ability to lie, cheat, steal, kill, and so much more that we would rather not admit. But if you can't admit to the truth about human nature, you will be a victim to it. You will sabotage yourself and be a target of the worst parts of humanity. This video is for those of you who aren't afraid to face the truth. You want to know human nature so you can use it for good instead of being a victim to it. We're gonna cover 5 dark truths about human nature inspired by one of my favorite books, The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. Let's start with number 1, envy. Envy is the story of Cain and Abel. The way the story goes, Cain and Abel are brothers and they both make sacrifices to God. But God only finds favor in the sacrifices that Abel makes while rejecting Cain's. This makes Cain deeply envious, and in his envy he murders Abel and is cursed by God. It only makes sense that the story of the first full-fledged humans in the Bible tells the story of envy and resentment because this is a sin that runs deep to the core of our nature. Envy motivates everything from communism to the way that weaker men will try to destroy the reputations of strong men. Yet none of these people will admit to it. Envy is one of the most socially unacceptable emotions. So rather than admit to their envy, what people do is justify it through systemic unfairness. They turn things into a moral fight where they get to be the virtuous one and the person that they envy is undeserving. Almost as soon as we feel the initial pangs of envy, we are motivated to disguise it to ourselves. It is not envy we feel, but unfairness at the distribution of goods or attention, resentment at this unfairness, even anger. You probably haven't built your whole personality around envy the way that political extremists have, but you still feel it. I'm in real estate, and I remember not that long ago, I was talking to this coworker of mine at my office who was having a lot of success. I remember I was having a particularly stressful day, and she came up to me and told me she had just gotten this new client in what seemed like very lucky circumstances. And I remember feeling a flash of envy, this voice in my head telling me she was undeserving. And it only happened in an instant, but I remember it vividly because it shocked me. I hadn't felt envy in a long time, and I genuinely liked this person, so it's not like I really wanted to see them fail. But what I realized in that moment was that I was not too good of a person that I couldn't feel envy and resentment. I didn't like that I felt this way though. I knew that envy was not the kind of thing that you want to play with. It's not the kind of emotion you want to be dominated by. And so I was looking for a healthy way to deal with it. And what I learned that helped me deal with my envy and will help you when you experience it in your life is that we first must acknowledge that we feel envious. Envy makes us feel shameful, so we won't even admit it to ourselves most of the time. But how can you fix a problem if you won't admit that you have it? At the core of envy is a belief that we cannot achieve what the person we envy has achieved. Envy is a disempowering feeling. The key to overcoming it is to take responsibility for your life and the results you have. Once you've done this, the person you envy can transform into someone you learn from. Once you've done this, their success no longer creates envy, but inspiration, because you realize that you can go accomplish the same thing. Maybe you aren't having the dating success that you want, and you see a guy who seems to be getting all the girls. Envy leads you to resent him. You blame genetics, or you say that all the girls are stupid for liking him. Taking responsibility means that you can acknowledge that you want what this man has, and you can look at him and learn from what he's doing right so that you can improve. You can then study him and ask yourself, why is this guy successful? Is he charismatic? Is he in great shape? Is he very confident? Then you can adopt these traits into yourself by learning them and through hard work. In my case, when I studied the agent at my firm who was doing well, I realized that the reason she was getting so many new clients was because she had put a lot of effort into her network. And that meant that if I went and put more effort into my network and worked on being a more social person, I could achieve the same results. Once I figured this out, my envy disappeared. I could go back to being happy for this other person's success because I felt empowered that I could achieve my goals too. This process of transmuting envy into personal responsibility is hard, and most people won't do it. It's much easier to blame the other person or God than it is to go work hard and improve yourself. That's why before we close out this section on envy, you need to understand how to recognize envy in other people and what to do about it. If you want to achieve any kind of success in life, you can't afford to be naive when it comes to envy because you are going to run into it. Your success is going to shine a bad light on some people and they are going to resent you for it. And people will do extreme things when possessed by envy. Communist Russia killed 100 million people in the 20th century, and the Nazis were largely motivated by envy too. Go read the manifesto of the Columbine killers and you'll realize envy is what motivated them as well. In more common instances, envy leads people to try and destroy your reputation or undermine your success. Envious people will show themselves in a number of ways. One of them is through micro expressions. Our subconscious mind reacts to things quicker than our conscious mind. And that means if you're paying attention, you can get a real reaction out of people before they put the mask up, and that's when you'll be able to tell if they're envious or not. Before the person can disguise their envy, they might give you a piercing glare that shows disdain and maybe even aggression. And many times envy can be difficult to hide, and you will pick up somebody's envy towards you in the falseness with which they give you praise. For example, maybe you just accomplished something big and the person congratulates you, but you get the sense that they're only congratulating you because they know that's the socially appropriate thing to do, but they don't feel it deep down. It's best to avoid people who are envious because there isn't much you can do for them and they can cause serious damage in your life. But be careful because some envious people will try to get close to you to undermine you. This is another common strategy of the envious, to praise you in this way that seems just a little bit too much as they try to butter you up. They do this kind of thing while spreading lies about you and damaging you behind the scenes. Dark truth number 2. People are rarely who they seem to be. Lurking beneath their polite, affable exterior is inevitably a dark shadow consisting of the insecurities and the aggressive, selfish impulses they repress and carefully conceal from public view. This dark side leaks out in behavior that will baffle and harm you. Learn to recognize the signs of the shadow self before they become toxic. You must become aware of your own dark side. In being conscious of it, you can control and channel the creative energies that lurk in your unconscious. By integrating the dark side into your personality, you will be a more complete human and will radiate an authenticity that will draw people to you. Part of what makes envy so bad is that people hide it from themselves and from other people. Many people who are motivated by envy don't consciously realize it. They will have convinced themselves that they have a noble reason for their behavior, but hidden under this morally righteous facade is their true motivation. This is an example of repression, which is the second dark truth of human nature. When there's something about ourselves that we don't like, we deny it. We pretend that we aren't violent, amoral, or selfish. But denial doesn't make these things go away. Instead, they hide in what is called your shadow. The shadow is the part of yourself that you have not accepted. It's full of all kinds of things in your personality that you wouldn't like to admit to. But because you have not accepted these things and integrated them into your personality, they act out in uncontrollable ways. This is what is meant by the saying, if you think a strong man is dangerous, just wait until you see what a weak man is capable of. Here's an example of how repression works. As children, we usually don't like to share. We take everything, the attention from parents and the toy that all the other kids want. If the adults in our lives socialize us, they will teach us that being stingy and selfish is bad and that we need to learn to share. And through this, we learn that being generous is good. We start offering our friend a cookie instead of eating all of them ourselves. And this is a good thing. Generosity is a good quality. But what happens is, because we want to be good, we identify with being generous and we reject the part of ourselves that is stingy and selfish. I mean, how many adults have you met in your life who will tell you they're stingy? Everyone tells you they're generous. But has our stinginess actually gone away? No, we've repressed it into our shadow. And because the stinginess still exists, but we're denying it, it will come out in these strange outbursts of stinginess and selfishness. Things that we repress don't go away, they just act on us in uncontrollable ways. Have you ever watched someone act in a way that seemed completely uncharacteristic? Most likely you just watched a part of their shadow take them over. A good Christian man with a really dark porn addiction, for example. You must integrate the parts of your shadow so that you can use them for healthy purposes. So how do you do this? With our example of stinginess, you must accept that there is a part of you that is stingy. It doesn't want to share, it wants everything, it wants more than everybody else. That's what stinginess is. It says, I don't care if you want this thing, I want it and I'm gonna have it. And when you accept that aspect of yourself, you can actually see a lot of good uses for it. I mean, how are you ever gonna get the girl that every guy wants if you're too passive to really go after her and you'd rather just be nice and let some other guy have her? That stingy energy, if used constructively, can motivate you to rise up the ranks in your career. Accepting these negative parts of yourself is the key to integrating them into your personality and using them for something positive. Stop running from these parts of yourself that society has told you are bad. They hold enormous power if you learn to use them instead of being used by them. Truth number 3. Why is it that the worst people in society end up being the politicians and the corporate oligarchs? And why do these people seem so hell-bent on controlling everybody's lives? It's because of our third dark truth, the lust for power. Deep within all of us is a desire for power, and that desire can be good. It motivates us to bring order into our lives and to strive and demand more of ourselves. But there is no more dangerous force in human nature than the lust for power. War, tyranny, and corruption all stem from the dark side of power. When the lust for power takes over someone, they will do almost anything to gain power or keep it. Power's dangerous allure operates in 2 ways. The first is that power attracts a certain kind of person. Power motivates us all, but some more than others. And it happens to be the worst kinds of people, the ones with an inner void to fill, a janky moral compass, or deep traumas who seem to be most motivated to attain power. In the book, Robert Greene uses John D. Rockefeller as an example. Rockefeller was the oligarch behind the Standard Oil empire, and he was the world's first billionaire. In today's money, his net worth would be over $400 billion. Rockefeller grew up poor. His father was a con artist who could be violent and cruel. He would leave the family for extended periods of time, not saying when he was going to come back, and leaving them to fend for themselves and constantly on edge. Rockefeller's unpredictable childhood created a deep need in him to create order and control in his life. And because of the poverty that he grew up in, he saw wealth as a means to accomplish this. When you look at it through this perspective, you can see what drove Rockefeller to create the biggest monopoly in business history. His insatiable drive for power and control led him to lie, instigate violence, and destroy the lives of anyone who stood in his way. But Rockefeller, like all power-hungry people, told himself a nobler story. Nobody wants to admit to their darker motives, so Rockefeller convinced himself that his actions were part of a righteous cause. He convinced himself that he was on a divine mission to bring stability to the oil industry. By convincing himself of this, he could do amoral, ruthless things with a clear conscience. This is a mark of people possessed by lust for power. They operate with a mindset of the ends justify the means. They will, of course, claim that all of their actions are for the moral good, but notice how every plan that these kinds of people put in place leads to more power for them. This is a strategy that politicians use constantly. Think about the climate change agenda, for example. Put your actual opinion of climate change to the side for a second and just pay attention to the kinds of policies that the people pushing this agenda support. They all lead to more power for them. In order to save the climate, you must give us power to decide what car you can drive and what kind of foods you can eat and even how many children you can have. And this is not exclusive to climate change. You can go back and look at something like the Patriot Act. The people who championed that at the time claimed it was in the name of national security and protecting people. And in order for us to protect you, you need to give us the power to spy on you and do all kinds of unconstitutional things. These people always claim things are for the greater good. It's for national security. It's for protecting the environment. They will pretend to be humanitarians with your best interest in mind. But don't trust these claims of moral superiority. Humans are far more motivated by power than they are by humanitarianism. A good rule to live by is that if the solution a person offers to a problem leads to that person having more power, what they really want is the power. The second way that power operates is through its corrupting nature. Some people start off good, but the allure of power leads them down a path of immorality. And this is why the story of the Lord of the Rings resonates with people so much. The ring of power is a symbol of the corrupting nature of power. The ring consumes anyone who wears it, and it destroys their soul. Very rarely can a man resist the temptation of power. And this is part of why someone like George Washington is so admired. At the founding of America, it was offered to Washington that he be king for life, but he chose not to do this and instead resigned from the presidency after 2 terms. This is probably the greatest sign of a good man, the ability to resist the temptation of power. And you might think you would do the same, but we've got thousands and thousands of examples of people who are given power and are corrupted by it, and we have have very few examples of people who stood up to it. We are all human, and on some level, we are driven by a desire for power. You might not be consumed by this desire the way that politicians are, but it's still there. And denying this will make it easier for power to corrupt you and for the powerful to take advantage of you. Harsh truth number 4.
We set up a hidden camera experiment to see if this woman would stand up at the sound of this tone, simply because everyone else is. You might be thinking you'd never go along with this. Or would you? After just 3 beeps, and without knowing why she's doing it, this woman is now conforming perfectly to the group.
The video you just watched is of an experiment designed to show the power of social conformity. All the people in the room except for the girl are actors, and their job is to stand every time the bell rings. There is no explanation given for why the bell is ringing or why you should stand up for it. And the test was to see how long it would take for the girl, who had no idea why the bell was ringing or why anybody was standing up, to just conform with the group and start standing up when the bell rang. And it only took 3 cycles for the girl to start standing up in unison with everybody else. She didn't even bother asking anybody why they were standing. She just immediately conformed. This is an example of dark truth number 4, the herd mentality. We are social animals, and it is deeply ingrained in us to want to conform to the group. And although our example of this experiment is pretty innocent, the herd mentality can be very dangerous. Rulers have used it forever to gain power and control. It's important to recognize that this herd mentality is active within you. We want to pretend that we're different and that our beliefs and actions, they come from our own convictions and nobody else is influencing us. But the truth is, we are deeply influenced by the people around us and the group that we identify with. The problem we face as social animals is not that we experience this force, which occurs automatically, but that we are in denial of its existence. We become influenced by others without realizing it. Accustomed to unconsciously following what others say and do, we lose the ability to think for ourselves. There are 2 main strategies that you can adopt to deal with the herd mentality. The first is that you can counter it. A lot of times the majority of people are wrong, and having this ability to go against the grain and think for yourself is a very powerful trait. How many people are swamped in student debt right now because they went along with the herd mentality that told them that the only way to be successful in life was to go to college? Make it a habit to start challenging your assumptions about life. Can you justify your beliefs, or are they just based on what other people told you and you accepted those beliefs without question? The second way to deal with the herd mentality is to use it to your advantage. And you do this by curating the herd that you're a part of. Get rid of the people who are negative and influence you in bad directions, and spend time around people who help you move towards your goals. If you want to make more money, spend time around people who are talking about money and who are financially successful. Your thoughts, actions, and beliefs will start to match up with these other people's. It's very hard to be the only poor person in a group of rich people, and it's very hard to be the only fat person in a group of healthy people. Dark truth number 5, the persona. In public, we want to present the best versions of ourselves. We present ourselves as confident, strong, intelligent, funny. These positive qualities that we want the world to see in us make up our persona. The persona in and of itself is not bad. In fact, it's necessary. We want to put our best foot forward when we're going out into the world, and society could not function if people were just flying off the handle and acting completely impulsively. The problem with the persona comes when we confuse the persona with the real person. We make this mistake first with ourselves by getting too attached to our persona. We forget that there is a whole nother part of us, our shadow, that needs to be embraced. And we also make the mistake of confusing other people's personas with who they really are. We see someone on social media who looks like they're winning in life. They've got the car you want, the girl you want, the lifestyle you want. They seem confident, well put together. They've never had a problem in their life. This leads you to feel like you're failing, or that your life is unfulfilling compared to these other people's lives. What we're forgetting is that all you're seeing seeing is just another person's persona. Behind a lot of the flashy Instagrams are fake people who are desperately in need of your validation. They're just like everybody else. They're hiding insecurities and doubts, dealing with failures and crushed dreams. Knowing this can bring comfort. You can accept that everyone out here is playing a character. It's part of the social game. You don't need to judge it. You in fact should participate in it. But with this awareness, you can understand that you don't need to take other people's personas seriously and compare yourself to them. And this allows you to forgive yourself for your shortcomings. You can stop looking at your problems and thinking something's wrong because problems are just a part of everybody's lives. Then, instead of trying to compete with other people's personas, you can put all of that energy into becoming the best version of yourself. Thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next video.